right, everyone, thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Best Trader I Know podcast, hosted by Swiss, the least sophisticated investor out of the whole of Brotato Capital. And this is my punishment to interview more successful people than I am on this show. And we have a great guest lined up, which is Gami from the IMF, but also a whole bunch of other things, as he has been in the crypto space for some time. The date of this recording / stream is the 17th of April. We've currently survived the tariff wars that have caused the great global recession that everyone is touting throughout crypto Twitter. So if you're with us post this apocalyptic event, you're lucky that you've survived. And yeah, we've got Gami on today. How I met Gami, I've actually met Gami a few times in person. First and foremost, I actually found out who Gami was through my good friend Tom. Tom was actually telling me about Gami because Gami had sent him a keyboard to use out of the blue randomly when he put up a Twitter post talking about the wholesomeness and kindness of this man that I didn't really know about, which I thought was really cool. And then I was fortunate enough to head up to Sydney and get a tour of the working environment up there. And Gami entertained me for his whole day. Absolutely derailed his work because I was asking level 3 or grade 3 level math questions about the IMF. So he's always got time for people, which is something I really appreciate. He's not being held against his will to come on this podcast, so it's really great to have him. So Gami, how are you, man?
I'm very good, thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on. I've heard good things.
Awesome, legend. I actually paid Gami to say that, by the way. So that's he's getting his money's worth.
Yeah, I actually just read it off a sheet that you sent me, so I was prepared and I think I nailed it, didn't I?
Yeah, you did very well. Yeah, you did very well. So you've been very busy in crypto. Now, usually we take it right back to the start, and these are very lax conversations. So let's start with you. So let's talk about why you got into crypto in the first place and how did you hear about it?
Yeah, I love reminiscing over this sort of stuff because it shows how much my life has changed over the last few years. But I think I've got a pretty common story for getting into crypto, and well, at least in my circles, and it was like, no beating around the bush. It was drugs. I was, an early user of like the dark web, and I was just interested in that whole world, and I suppose I bought a few things, got them delivered, got excited about what was going on, and at the time, it was purely through just curiosity. I think I'd heard some stuff in the news like 2015, 2016 about, there was some sort of market that was going down. It might have been like Dream Market or one of the other early ones where they had all these sort of problems happening on the dark web with different markets. And they all had one thing in common. It was they all used like Bitcoin or Monero for transactions. And so my first exposure was Bitcoin, and I'd worked in computer systems engineering and electrical. So I'd been building these like distributed instrumentation and data collection systems, and so the whole concept of Bitcoin sort of made sense to me. And I think I'm just like maxed out on ADHD. So like as soon as I find something new, it's just an obsession that sort of gets me into it, as opposed to any one event. I think it's just like over a few months I was just getting more and more obsessed with it, and couldn't stop reading about it. So
yeah. Oh, nice, man. When you were using the dark web and for the recreational activities and so forth, did you have any opinion on the tech or like the use of what it was, or did you kind of think that this can't be real, therefore like there are no consequences to my actions using this technology sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question, because like back when I got into it, I was sort of fresh out of a divorce. So I like,
oh wow,
Yeah, like I got married pretty, oh, not super young. Like I'd been in a relationship for a long time, and then we got married, and then it didn't work out, and had a divorce. And I guess I was just sort of like in this bit of a soul searching, journey, like
Yeah.
trying different psychedelic drugs and all that sort of stuff. But while in, after getting divorced and being like single as an adult for the first time in my life, I was kind of like experimenting in all parts of my life. And one big sort of, I guess, a privacy scare in a sense happened where I was, I guess I was partying too hard and maybe met the wrong people and was getting stalked. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, just a few things had happened that sort of made me more aware of like privacy tech and maybe being, I guess, the kind of person I am. I'd fallen down the rabbit hole around like social media and online advertising and how they would take all of your data and how they would use it. So there was like a technical background combined with like a real skepticism of like social media and a lot of the things that were happening at the time. And this is a whole nother story. And I know we're like so early on to bring this up, but
No, you're
I'd
good, man.
become this like I'd done a bunch of stuff when like beards were really popular. um,
Beards? Like
and I would,
facial beards?
yeah, facial beards, because I can grow like an insane beard, and it's like it
Flex.
catches
Yeah.
people by surprise, like it growing this huge beard. And I was like, I was sleuthing around online once, and I figured out that like there were 12,000 people a month searching for the phrase "how to shape a beard," and I was like, I had this huge crazy beard, and I just went into my barber one day, and I was like, "How do you shape a beard?" And he like explained it to me, and I went home and made a YouTube video, and it got like 500,000 views really quickly, and like my face ended up popping up on all these like tumblers and stuff where because there was some people with like fetishes or whatever, and I was like the subject of this like community of people with a beard fetish. So
Oh my
that's
god.
where like the privacy stuff came to be interesting to me, because I was just like, man, I have no control over like what happens with this information, photos, and then anything they could find about me, to try and pinpoint like where I was from. And like there were just all these really kind of gross things on the internet, and like was, there were like a lot of like these these guys in the gay community they call bears, who were like, blogging about like men with beards, and I would just like randomly pop up in these blogs and shit. But yeah, weird way to answer the question, but it was the way the sort of like trust assumptions that you make with all other tech. Like I was already working in an industry where we were creating distributed systems that would, not cause disputes on like prices of energy, and then like bills of tenants in these buildings and stuff, high-rise buildings and that. So think I was just like very lucky to be in a mindset where I appreciate the tech and appreciate like using the dark web in a way where like I could, experiment with drugs and whatever, and do it in a way where I felt like I was not going to be found out.
Yeah,
Like it was very much drugs for me was a really personal experience. So yeah.
yeah. You could interact on the dark web and not be subject to being sexualized by gay bears, essentially.
Yeah, like to be fair, like I kind of, some of it I was kind of like excited about, because it was just like, it's like, man, this is crazy. Like these people are fanaticizing over something so niche, and I've always had niche interests, and I was just like, it's crazy, man. There's a community for anything
Yeah.
on the internet. These people are nuts.
I think it's so cool that you like made the video and then all of a sudden started seeing your face in like niche communities, and that's how like viral it can go.
Yeah, it definitely, like it went viral enough that I was living. This is when I'd first moved to Sydney that this started to happen. This is about, it's like nearly 10 years ago. I think it was 2016, 2015, 2016. And
Mm.
yeah, there were these like, one of my cousins and one of my brothers are gay. And in Sydney, especially at that time, like prior to COVID, the clubbing scene in Sydney was really popping, especially in like the gay community.
Yeah.
And so I'd go out with like, my cousin and my brother who would visit from time to time, and just random, like I met some random who recognized me from a Tumblr. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So that was what alerted me to it. And then I've sort of like went looking, and I was like, oh Jesus, this is crazy.
Yeah.
My name was never attached to it, fortunately, but I was just like exposed to all this stuff. And I was exploring myself with drugs a lot. So I was kind of like starting to develop a lot of skepticism around the world and how it works, and
Yeah.
reading up on like economics and, you know, empirical stuff, you know, like just all the things you do as you're approaching your 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. Did you ever like close the loop on the recreational activity around drugs? Did you sort of become really open to it and then come full circle and you're like, oh no, I can kind of see why they're, illegal substances?
Yeah, like I'm a stoner, but back then I was like doing like ketamine and like mushrooms, acid, MDMA, cocaine, crack, speed, whatever, you know, I just
Yeah.
tried everything. Um, and none of them are for me except like for weed. Like everyone sort of knows me as a bit of a stoner, and it's just growing up in the country with like literally nothing to do. But there was conveniently easy weed to get just because we lived in like a mining town. So I've just always sort of like been exposed to soft drugs. And then that experience that I found crypto through was literally like a hard time in my life where I sort of turned to the harder stuff to try and figure things out. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely changed my opinion on it a lot. And then like crypto gave me like a real deep interest and a bit of a purpose as well. So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about it like that you were open to doing all that sort of stuff, because I feel like you can come across very, I wouldn't say judgmental, but people that are kind of like very closed-minded to that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's a really
But
refreshing take.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just all like, you know, I think a lot of people overreact to these sorts of things, and it's such a personal experience for most people. So good to have a
Yeah.
support network. But yeah, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Um, Going from using the currency to predominantly maybe more investing in it, how did that come about? That transition from buying recreational stuff on the dark web to then, I guess, maybe like investing in Bitcoin or Ethereum if that was your first foray into the space.
Yeah, so a little known fact is like I've never actually bought crypto. So I've only ever earned it and then sort of like gone from there. So
Wow.
in 2017, I got like my first job in crypto. I contributed to a bunch of different privacy projects because I was like already interested in that stuff, and I worked at a lot of the early privacy coins that were mostly like forks of Bitcoin that would run on different sort of network infrastructure. So I met like a lot of the OG sort of crowd through doing that. A couple of the projects that I worked with would send me to conferences, and I would just sort of do the rounds, get to know everyone, do a few speaking gigs, all that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, just it's one thing led to another. And I'd sort of earned quite a lot. And, some of the coins that I would work with would start to do pretty well. And
Yeah.
of course, I was like so pilled on all this stuff that I would always be like running nodes, and I'm a tinkerer. So I'm like, and I'm an electrical tradesman originally, and computer systems engineer. So I would just like nodes, like running nodes was like exciting as fuck, man. Back then, I'd be like, yeah, have all these like things set up in my little apartment. I live in like a studio apartment in Sydney by myself, and you bring like a girl home, and you'd be like, oh, I don't mind that shit. Um,
Like, is
just
it
keep your
here
eyes over here.
or you're like, yeah, don't worry about it. It just makes a lot of noise, and
Yeah,
maybe one day it'll pay off. Yeah.
keeps you warm. But yeah, so in doing that, I sort of I really fucked up at one point where I'd basically gone all in on something and was staking it. And then these were really early proof of stake networks. Like I'd worked with some of the projects that even did some of the earliest smart contract experiments as well.
Oh
And
wow.
so I would set up these nodes, run them, have my entire stack, and then like go to a conference in fucking Mexico, right? And then like I'd this one particular trip, I won't go into like all the details because
Yeah.
it's not really necessary, but this one particular trip, like delisting occurred. There was the whole FATF like task force thing where they would like coming out against all privacy technology,
Jeez.
and just like all my bags got like delisted from like Binance and shit. And this is like I think 2018,
Wow.
2018, 2019. I can't really remember exactly when, but it was like basically just went to zero. And I'm like, fuck, everything like I've earned over the last couple of years is like gone. And so
Ah.
I would always like keep something aside and like primarily in Bitcoin just because like it was my intro to the space. But yeah, I never really had an investor mindset. I was just like tinkering, and I come from a pretty sort of rough background family wise and stuff, and we never had money, and there was never really anyone that was good with money. So I was
Yeah.
just kind of like learning as I go. Yeah. And the investment side, like it's still not really a thing for me. Like I make a couple of decent like calls every now and then, but I only ever play long term games. Like even now, just heavy ETH bags while everyone else is giving me shit. I just keep writing it down. I'm nearly back at my break even. So
Yeah, let's not talk about the depressing stuff like ETH being down, but you're also being modest as well because I know that you did really well on a Zora trade, which we'll talk about later in the episode. I did have a couple of questions on this as well back when you were working on these like early forks of like these privacy coins. Did you feel like everyone was in the same boat working out what this tech was and what the capabilities were?
yeah, definitely. That actually, I really like the framing of that question too, because you would work with these people of really different backgrounds.
Mm,
Like a lot of my friends know, like back in the day, I'd like I was working alongside these crazy people like John McAfee, right? And it's like
oh
in the
wow.
same place where we would be like talking to someone like that, there would be the most broad array of people you can imagine, like in terms of what they'd done before and what their expertise was.
Yeah.
And so you would just kind of, I would feel nervous going into like an event or, starting a new job or working with whoever. And the the reality was that like we were all on a level playing field because we were all new to this, and regardless of how relevant your previous experience was, there's just really no there's really no way to like forecast the way a market behaves, and like everything has always been so markets based in crypto that you just have like I don't know, you have a different experience of a working life. Like it's just it's nothing there's nothing else like it. It's filled with people who are like deeply passionate about what they're doing, but also passionate about the cause, as well as being just like insane. There's a lot of really weird people in crypto.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with that because like I'm a bit of a bit of a odd beat sort of alternative sort of person with random interests, and it's just one of many that I care about. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that's super interesting.
definitely like that.
Yeah. Do you think, because this might tie into the next question, is when do you think this like financial understanding came in about things to do with market caps and valuations and stuff? Because it sounds like what you just described with everyone being from diverse backgrounds working on this tech, that that's not really a topic of conversation so much, right?
Yeah. Like everyone would bring their sort of like context to what it was that you were talking about, but it was just everyone was so filled with like excitement about the possibilities. You know, it's quite different now. Like there's not,
Mm.
you know, like a real manifestation of what I'm talking about was when like the ICO bubble happened. Like everyone was just having these crazy ideas, and like a lot of them were ridiculous, but they were at least dreaming. You know, they were thinking big. They're thinking like replacing everything, and I think that like I think just through the experience of like working alongside people from very different backgrounds, I started to sort of like listen into what it is that they cared about. So
Mm.
I would sort of like read different books and pick up on different podcasts, and maybe, you know, start reading like white papers and actual research papers, you know, like going
Yeah.
into like the Google Scholar search and archives and all that sort of stuff. But the main point where I like really wrapped my head around like markets and being a bit more like of you know, like a financial mindset was I just realized one day that I was like really interested in economics. Like I
Yeah.
really liked the concepts of finance. I liked the way that they told the story of like how the world works, and like was really interested in a lot of the stories around like you know, the darker side of things, like how, you know, the geopolitical stuff and like the things that sort of happen around you know, like asserting US dollar dominance around the world, and all these sort of like crazy stories that sort of create a lot of speculation around conspiracy theories, you know, because I'd been interested in so many like really weird subcultures that it was just natural that I would sort of go that way.
Yeah.
But something that really comes to mind is just like I used to work at this boutique engineering firm, and what I would do is I'd design these systems where you would essentially just be like metering everything and analyzing power quality on these networks, pulling all the data in, and then just like using it for all this different stuff. So it might be to like charge tenants for the energy they use, or to
Yeah.
improve the network, or, you know, limit the effect on the grid, all this sort of stuff. And while I was doing that, it was actually such mind-numbing work, because you were just in a spreadsheet. A lot of the time it was just like site acceptance or quality assurance testing.
Yeah.
And so you'd be in like a 50,000 row spreadsheet, and I'd just have podcasts in my ears or audio books, and I'd just be listening to like everything I could about finance and economics and marketing. Actually, like I really took an interest in marketing,
Mm.
and that just came about purely because of like I have a deep interest in etymology and where words come from, and I was just like marketing. You know, like just I'm a bit retarded, so
No,
but yeah,
that's
that's sort of how
that's
it came about.
That's super funny that you, you just like marketing. That's where like my ADHD will direct me to next.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say this at face value, but I wanted to kind of ask you the same question, but I guess you can probably tie it back to some similar experiences. But it just sounds like staying curious has been a very good way for you to find success. Do you believe that throughout this whole sort of journey that you've been on?
Yeah, 1,000%. Like I think it's actually the defining characteristic of like finding an edge in any way, because, you know, like everyone, like you just got to go on like a public transport, right, to get an idea of what most people are like.
Yeah.
And most people literally just like strap a phone to their face, and it feeds them a bunch of fucking irrelevant information,
Yeah.
and they don't even know what's happening. They don't even touch their screen, right?
Mm.
It's just like the feed is going, and they're just like "Ugh," zombified. Where like I don't do that. I don't have any social media that is like that. Like I have Twitter,
Yeah.
but I use it to broadcast my thoughts. Like if I'm ever looking at my phone, I'm usually chatting to like ChatGPT, or
Yeah.
I'm usually like making a meme or talking to someone. And in my relationships, like and my partner, she's amazing, like super supportive of me.
Yeah.
She's just like amazed that like I never switch off, and in reality, like I wish I could, you
Yeah.
know, and I think that that's like that's a big part of yeah, finding an edge is just like being inherently curious and insatiable.
Yeah, I can just imagine you at the dinner table talking about how the Chinese are buying out sort of docks or like in a foreign country, and she's like, "Yeah, that's great. Can you just like pass the salt?" Like like you're just so wide in with all the stuff that you have an interest in. I want to pivot a little bit to a lot of the things that have probably kept you insanely busy. Because you actually, when I was taking notes and looking for questions to ask you on, I hadn't really calculated how many things you've been involved with. So let's start with nouns. Maybe for the audience, help if you could help them understand what are nouns or what is nouns, and then sort of maybe talk about your involvement with those guys.
Yeah, for sure. So I tend to describe nouns as an infinite art project. Nouns as in people, places, and things. And what it is in reality, it's a set of smart contracts on Ethereum that create a daily auction. And that daily auction is for anyone in the world to buy an NFT. And that NFT is a fully on chain artwork. And it's a collaborative effort between people like 4156, who you might know for selling a ape crypto punk to Nick Tomano for $10 million in the hype of NFT summer.
Wow.
Gremplin, famous artist for Cryptodes, he was one of the contributors. Timpers from Chimpers NFT, and then Dom Hoffman, the creator of Vine. So there was like 10 co-founders that came together. That it was like, you know, half artists, half technologists, and they created this infrastructure. Which, a little bit of trivia: the auction mechanism is actually a fork of the original Zora, which we can get into later.
Yeah,
And
definitely, man.
nouns, and nouns just sort of started. It was 8th of August 2021,
Yeah.
and it was the first auction of one of these NFTs. And the NFTs are nouns because their heads are like people, places, and things. You know, like I have a skateboard,
Yeah.
a cotton candy, and a trash can. And they were a huge mindshare success in the beginning. Like the first ever auction was like 600 and something ETH. It was insane. It was over $1 million for this first NFT.
Wow.
And then like I bought, yeah, it's crazy. And I was just like, I was in the community and I wasn't saying anything. I was just observing, and I noticed through this daily NFT auction, the first thing I noticed was that all of the proceeds went into the treasury, and the
Yeah.
founders never got any ETH, but instead they got every 10th now. So
Gotcha.
they had this kind of like, yeah, this vested interest, and then each of those nouns NFTs count as a vote over the treasury. So as a community, everyone decides how they spend the money,
Yeah.
and it's one of the only examples of like a fully on-chain, fully decentralized DAO.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'd gotten involved really early, and then a friend of mine and I, Blockbird, he's a guy from New Zealand that I met through some early NFT experiments I'd done in like 2020 or
Yeah.
maybe 2019 or something like that. We went halves in a noun 189, and we paid the 89.89 each for it, which at the time was like 220 grand US, which is so retarded in hindsight. But we did it with the intention of starting a fork of nouns, which was focused on one specific domain, and that was extreme sports. And
Yeah.
that was just because I had a history in running these big communities of skateboarders
Yeah.
back in my early 20s. And yeah, we bought the noun, and then shortly after we did a proposal and got funded to create NARS, or NARS for the Americans that might be listening.
NARS.
And we just fund things like skate park refurbishments and all stuff like that. And yeah, I sort of fell in love with Nouns mostly because of the people involved there. It attracted so many OGs in crypto. It attracted a lot of whales. It attracted like a lot of technical people and a lot of creative people. So it's been a big part of my crypto journey. Like I'm still really passionate about it. I just don't spend as much time in it these days. But yeah,
Yeah.
contributed early on and helped shape the culture heaps. And yeah, did a bunch of projects within the project itself as well. So yeah, it's been,
Yeah.
been a big part of my time.
Yeah, that's really wholesome that you went on that journey through Nouns. For me, just with Nouns, I saw them, I saw how expensive they were, and I noticed that they had that mechanism of one per day. And then I didn't hear too much about them until I came across the video that you were in, which I only realized really recently, and I'm talking maybe like 2 days ago, that video or a photo of maybe you shared it, maybe it was actually you that shared it, but
I did.
it
Yeah.
was that photo of you that came up, and I was like, oh my god, that's Gami, because I remember seeing that, and I think this may have been back in 2022. I remember seeing the video, and then it was the first time I could actually visually put an NFT brand in. I don't want to say real life. That's not the best way to describe it, but it was like there was a skate rail set up where people were grinding up and down on their skateboard, and it was just the glasses or something like that. And I was like, that's that brand. It was like me in like real time making a connection between the tab on OpenSea and then like actually real life where someone's like skateboarding up and down on this thing, and yeah, I just thought that was like super cool. I was like, oh wow, this is actually like out of the OpenSea tab and into the real world. So
That's really cool that you saw that because the way that came about was so interesting. Like NARS, for whatever reason, took off in Brazil, and it turned out that it was because a bunch of skateboarders who worked in crypto worked for Shapeshift, and Eric Voorhees, like early
yeah, yeah,
company, and yeah, they really liked NARS, and they came up with this idea. Like it's not even my idea, the Noggles rail, but I call it the obstacle. And it was like it's a huge set of Nouns glasses, the Noggles,
yeah.
and they actually installed one permanently in front of the Emperor's house in Rio de Janeiro, in a place
No.
called Praça Kindi. Yeah, so because Brazil actually used to be a dictatorship, and back in the day, Bob Burnquist, who you might know from Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the game, was the guy with the bucket hat and the glasses, and he's like the second most famous skateboarder in history, basically. Like he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He was first to do like the mega ramp and all this stuff. He found out about NARS because of this event that happened where they got this giant set of Noggles installed, and then of course he found out about Nouns, and I became friends with him because
Oh
I
wow.
used to play as him on Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and now we're friends. And I actually onboarded him to Nouns. I did a proposal where he got gifted a skateboard noun that I used to own. And it's like it came full circle, and it was all because of these kids from Brazil who were just like super passionate about crypto
Yeah.
and skateboarding, and they sort of learnt my history with like privacy and all that sort of stuff. And they are super like punk, they're just like, yeah, Gami, let's do some crazy shit. And now we've got like 20 of these sculptures installed all around the world. We even have a map on NARS.com where you can like see where they all are. And yeah, that's kind of what NARS does. It just like installs these like noun sculptures that you can go and shred on your skateboard. So yeah.
That's actually a fucking awesome story. What was it like talking to your hero, like a person that you used to play on, obviously like one of the world's best games, right? That would have been insane.
Oh, dude, it was fucking insane, man. Like, I just couldn't believe it at the time. I used to pinch myself. And I'm just so pissed that because of a family commitment, well, I'm not pissed because I love all my family, but I was upset that I missed out on this event. There was Nouns Fest. I think it was last year,
Yep.
maybe mid-year. And Bob Burnquist hosted a Nouns event at his ranch where he has the mega ramp. and he put giant pair of noggles as this rail that he like hits as he flies through the fucking air. He literally drops in out of a helicopter.
You missed
And then
that for a
just like
family event.
Bro, it was crazy. Like I was so depressed about it, but at the same time, like I've got a nephew now, so I'm like I'm as excited about my nephew as I was Bob Burnquist. But yeah, he and I chat a bunch online and
Yeah.
video calls, and I've skated most of my life, so it was crazy.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's really wholesome too. And yeah, that's a tough one. Maybe that's like the universe telling you, like, we'll give you like the biggest high you've ever experienced, but you're then gonna have to like make a choice whether you like go and hang out with the cool kids or be there for the family. So yeah, that's quite that doesn't surprise me, but it's also quite like pretty funny that you had to be, you know, at the crossroads for that one there. Wow. Yeah, I also think it's
I
like,
love a good story, so it's fine.
yeah, I also think it's incredible that it was a place in Brazil. Like Brazil to Australia is like 24 hours of travel. Like that's all the way around the other world. That happened.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, man, like it's unbelievable, and like it's still there. Like, sorry, I forgot to mention the relevancy of like Bob Burnquist as well, not just to me as a fan, but like
Yeah.
he was plucked out of Brazil as an 18-year-old. He'd like skated through this like this part in history where like Brazil was this dictatorship, and in Rio de Janeiro, it was actually illegal to skateboard. And this Praça 15, which means like Plaza 15 or whatever, is literally in front of the emperor's house, who used to, you know, enforce all these ridiculous rules. And now there's all these sculptures every year. This crew called I Love Kinsey, they go to this spot every year and have a crazy event and install a new skatable structure. So like some sort of sculpture. And these noggles that NARS installed, it was on the 10th anniversary of the legalization of skateboarding, like the official, government recognition of skateboarding as not being a crime. It was literally a crime. Like, it's just so crazy.
Wow.
The whole thing blows my mind. And yeah, that was all because of fucking NFT, man. Like that blows my mind.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a story that like everyone should probably hear in relation to NFTs because of the bad rap that they give. But yeah, wow, I can't believe it took me this long to figure out that this was a real story, man. But that's really incredible.
Even that can't stop them going to zero. It's like.
Oh, they were so expensive when they came out, the nouns. I think they were like triple digit ETH. Like, it was expensive.
Now you can get one for like, I think the daily auctions at the moment, they're running at like 1.8 to 2.4 ETH roughly per day.
Wow.
But it's still like they've still got a treasury with like, I don't know, $6 or $7 million in it at one point.
Yeah,
we had like 110 million. It's all gone.
I know
it's
it kind of
crazy project.
Yeah, I think it has that capacity to work again, right? Which is what I kind of get from it, is that if there is such a high demand for these in the future, that there could be another event where some funding goes in, a spin-off occurs somewhere. Oh, actually, do you know much about the Nouns esports? Because I see a lot of them on the timeline as well.
I do. I even have a little story. So I'm friends with Sasquatch, who started it, along with Brennan, and Brennan is from Austin, Texas, and we got to meet up with. And when we were raising for IMF, actually, and we hung out and went for dinner with those guys, the founders of Nouns, and also Noun 40, which is Hong Kim. He's the CTO and co-founder of Bitwise.
Yep.
And so it was like this crazy thing. And yeah, we were talking about Nouns esports then, and I got to share with them. I was like, nouns.gg, their website, I owned the domain, and I donated it to the project as my little hat tip to them, because they were in part inspired by NARS. So I actually helped them with their original proposal, and to get that off the ground. Like I didn't have any other involvement in those two little things, but yeah, they did really well. Like at one point they made it to the final eight in League of Legends, in the World Championships, and think they're actually not operating at the moment because the DAO's kind of going through a bit of a change, and a lot of proposals that don't explicitly make money are getting voted down. And I think that
Okay.
that's probably for the best. But yeah, Nouns Esports is awesome. Like they actually created a movement in esports where the the gamers would actually learn so much about how these organizations were run because the Nouns Esports was like DAO funded and run very transparently.
Oh wow.
They sort of like showed everyone the truth of the industry and how much of a shitty deal a lot of people were getting. And so it kind of changed the industry a bit. It opened up all these new conversations, and sort of like forced the hand of some of these greedy motherfuckers that were taking advantage of people. So yeah, it was really cool. It's really impactful project, and yeah, shout out to Sasquatch and Brennan.
Yeah, that's incredible that there was a flow-on effect with the sense that other players or other businesses were getting a, like you said, a very transparent look into how teams were being funded. I guess, like just like off the top of my head, I would imagine it's a whole lot of sponsorship and not too many funds going to the players to in order to make it work.
Yeah, that's right. It's very similar to like any sort of sporting league where it's just a lot of shady like agent sort of activity that goes on in between everyone who's actually important.
Yeah.
And yeah, they sort of shone a light on that. And you can go on to Reddit actually and look at like the Dota. Actually, sorry, it wasn't League of Legends. It was Dota 2 that they got to the World Series final.
Yeah.
Mix the games up, similar games. Um, actually, they would probably hate me if I said that. The there's forums on Reddit around like Dota 2 and all sorts of stuff where like Nouns Esports is like an incredibly passionate discussion topic for people. Like there are threads on Reddit with just like thousands of comments. It's crazy.
Yeah. It is a little bit sad now that I guess, and well, it makes sense because I guess all businesses tend to come to these points, I guess, but how they have to pivot to more so revenue generating business proposals and less stuff around esports, I guess, through the DAO.
Totally, yeah. And I think like it sort of just harks back to like the whole reason for crypto to exist, right? Like it was all about there being too much trust in the system and solving counterparty risk. And I think that's why the alignment with transparency of crypto-based organizations, like ones that are actually decentralized, like they do alert people to the way that things are, and how we just trust so much in people who don't have aligned interests, and it always works out pretty bad for the people that have the talent. So yeah.
Yeah. Pivoting back a little bit because we kind of jumped to your involvement with Nouns, which just off the assumption of when it was minted was probably the back half of the previous cycle. When you, well, obviously probably staying curious during the 2020-2021 run up, did you know it was going to be as wild as it was, or like what was that experience like for you with that cycle?
It was insane because like I'd been through the absolute chaos of 2017 into Christmas, and then the early 2018, and then just that like brutal bear.
Yeah.
But then DeFi summer was sort of where I did like the best in my career. Like it was just, they were autistic games, and I'm an obsessive compulsive maniac. So it was like you could just spend time and find an edge, and then I sort of like pivoted straight into NFTs as they were emerging, and it wasn't because like I knew what was coming. It was purely because of tinkering and being curious. It was because the way that I did well in DeFi summer is I would find all these projects, get in as early as I could, and just be the first to LP on Uniswap, because I'd like dug deep in how to understand Uniswap.
Yeah.
And I just, you would never be seen selling because you were just providing liquidity, and as the price would run up, it would automatically scale you out of your token position and more into ETH, and then I would just like slowly pull out my liquidity as the price was going up and other people were piling liquidity in.
Yeah.
And so through that experience, Uniswap v3, the spec was written like, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I do remember like reading the original spec for like the Uniswap v3.
Yeah.
And the big change was that your receipt tokens, instead of being ERC20, were NFTs. And I was like, fuck, what are NFTs? and it was, and I'd also, like, prior to that, I'd bought some crypto keys.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand them. I was just like, oh, this is funny. It's like a trading card, and I never really looked into it.
Yeah.
But then Uniswap sort of put me on to better understanding of them and being like, oh, these are tokens with like a database inside of it. Like, that's really interesting. And yeah, played around in that NFT cycle a bunch. Didn't really do too well, except for, I feel like the scams where you would just like mint it and then sell it immediately. And then like you'd find out like an hour later that they were a bunch of like scammers who just like rugged the raise and disappeared.
Oh, damn.
And I was like, oh, well, this is something you do. You just like find scammers and mint the NFTs and dump them straight away. So I just did that. And unfortunately didn't mint the Bored Apes that I had. I had like 3 laptops and 6 browser windows open, or maybe 9 browser windows. And I had like everyone set up ready to max mint the Bored Apes, because Frankie Nines, the guy behind Supducks, he used to work at Dapper Labs, and he messaged me and he was like, oh, bro, you should check out these Bored Apes.
Yeah.
And I didn't mint any because I was like, they're fucking ugly. Miss Jenny Wealth. But, it's like, just back to what we were talking about at the beginning, like I just feel like being curious, and not just curious because like there's a trend happening or like you're following what other people are doing, but just because you want to know like how shit works. I think that that's always been sort of like my one thing that I hold on to and sort of that leads me wherever I go.
Yeah. What was it like with your experience from the 2017 cycle to then experimenting with DeFi? Because I feel like through the bear market, correct me if I'm wrong, your trust in a lot of stuff would have been fairly low. So the idea of Uniswap coming out and they're like, hey, put your ETH through this and then, you might get something back. It's like, don't know how I feel about that. But I also think that your experience with computer systems and obviously your background, I don't know, I feel like you would, like you said, you may have had that autistic edge through that period of time.
Yeah, I think it was that, to be honest. It was just like I could figure it out. And by that point, I'd met like quite a lot of technical people.
Yeah.
And in my engineering like experience in the past, I would always be involved in like technical documentation and sort of sales. So I would always like commission systems, and because I was on site doing this sort of work, I would also interface between like our cracked engineers and like the people that were accepting the project. So I'd always be this sort of like conduit. And I took that into crypto as well, where I was just like, I can understand the technical stuff. I don't want to sit around coding, but I can like use it effectively. So I think at that point, I literally just like asked a bunch of people that I'd met and been like, hey, how does this work? And like, what does this part mean in the docs or whatever?
Yeah.
And it was enough to have that confidence. So yeah, I'm really big on like trustless stuff. I think it's amazing. Like I just have trust issues from like a tumultuous childhood, like multiple stepdads, whatever that means. You hear that a bit actually in crypto. People with sort of different backgrounds just having I don't know, just having these traits because of like however it was that they grew up. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a really funny meme out there where it's a kid and it's the dad going one way and the mum going the other way, and it's like pulling the kid in either direction, and then there's like a gap between the ledge of which the mum is on and the ledge of which the dad is on. And then it's like underneath it, like what the kid falls into, it's just an image of like a leverage bar, and it just says 100x, and it's just like if you have like family difficulties you'll find 100x leverage or something like that. And I was like, yeah, like made like a little interoceptive moment, if that's the correct word. You just like kind of look at things and go, well, maybe I am here because of this. But yeah, maybe people can relate to that, or
Oh
maybe
man.
it's yeah.
No, I fully relate to that. That is, wow. I don't think I've ever seen that
Yeah, I'll
before,
have
and
to
I
find
want
it.
to find it now and put it on the wall.
It is pretty funny. Um, did you ever get like emotionally attached to these ideas, or essentially what you were experimenting with in the early days of DeFi Summer? Because my understanding, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, is that DeFi Summer and the NFT Mania are completely different things. But maybe for you, you thought this was revolutionary tech that you were happy to hold or believe in long term.
Yeah, I think like that was probably a big part of what made me fall like really into an obsession with Ethereum.
Mm,
Was just like, even to this day, it's where most of the value is stored, where DeFi is really robust, and you don't have to have these trust assumptions, because even though DeFi happens in other places and on other chains, like there are so many trust assumptions that
yeah,
it just doesn't compare to Ethereum. Like you can do so much entirely on chain on Ethereum, where like other chains, for example, like if you have a chain that's way faster
mm,
and has like different sort of properties, then like just imagine what that means when like a ton of leverage starts to unwind, and like you can't guarantee that it's always going to be online or like function the way that you expect it would. So I think like the there's that is like the technical part. And sorry about the echo. I'm just like going to get another drink.
I was like wondering if that was me. I was like, oh my god, is the audio cooked?
I was actually just going to break into song briefly and like give you a bit of a show, but
Yeah.
the main thing about like both the DeFi and NFT cycles that I found really interesting sort of relate to my history in like community building. So I've
Mm,
always been like been a bit of a black sheep of like family scenarios, and you know just the way I am. I'm sort of tend to be a bit of a loner, um, and yet I've like built a lot of big communities. Like I've sort of credited for a lot of the community building in Nouns, and
yeah.
I've done a lot of stuff with like skateboarding back in the day and the beard thing, and like
Yeah.
I felt these were communities of like tens of thousands of people, and crypto to me is like when you solve counterparty risk, what you actually do is you unlock this whole new paradigm of coordination. And I'm really into like the science of like genetics and memetics, because like all you leave behind in this world are your memes and your genes, or your genes and your memes. And to me, like that is the thing about like NFTs and crypto and DeFi that's so interesting, is just like you align incentives in this environment where you're not dependent on people trusting one another,
Yeah.
and the counterparty risk is minimized. And all of a sudden, it's like imagine how many people could coordinate around a common goal and what you could achieve.
Yeah.
So that's what sort of like really pilled me and made me fall in love with this stuff, as opposed to just like speculating on it. And that's probably why it couldn't work in anything else, because as soon as you talk like hierarchical structure, I'm just like middle fingers up, go fuck yourself, basically.
Yeah. The rabbit's out of the hat, if that's the correct analogy. But yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's philosophical to a degree, but it's also just like it's just a really keen area of interest of mine. Like I love the concept of the invisible hand, and I love to like understand how a lot of the time the people who are like chasing clout and getting all the attention for like a pushing a particular idea, like they're not the person who started the movement. And there's this video that I always refer people to called Leadership Lessons from Dancing Guy. It's by Simon Sinek it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's like they're at a music festival and there's this guy dancing by himself looking like a dickhead on a hill. And it's actually the first follower who comes and copies what he's doing that is that catalytic moment that creates a movement. And I really like observing the people that actually start movements as opposed to the ones who take all the credit for them. And that's another place to find alpha, It's like just another kind of tinkering that I like to do.
Yeah. I think I really rate Simon Sinek for his sort of work, so I'll have to check out that video. I wanted to pivot again to talk about the IMF, and maybe to start from the beginning. What is the IMF? Is it the International Monetary Fund, or is it something else?
So it's the International Meme Fund. And I just realised I gave you the wrong name before I met Derek Sivers, but back to IMF.
Yeah.
The IMF is International Meme Fund, but it is like a satirical or sardonic take on the real IMF or the off-chain IMF. And I took an interest in them because of a book that I read called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And it's the story of a guy who was basically the International Monetary Fund have these people that they're effectively accountants and finance bros who get sent into like developing countries to issue loans in US dollars against resources. And it's a methodology for capturing power, geopolitical power all across the world, and assert US dollar dominance. So it was like one of these things that I was really interested in back in the day. And the opportunity came to start a project with some friends here in Sydney, and it was a lending project. And I just remember like the off-chain IMF being referred to as the lender of last resort.
Yeah.
And we wanted to effectively do that in crypto. Like we wanted to create lending markets for the long tail of assets that get overlooked by the major lenders, and we built it.
Fuck yeah, nice. What does it mean to be the lender of last resort in relation to perhaps the background image and the certain asset that people get to loan against?
Yeah, it's so when you think about like the monetary fund, they're willing to take on greater risk because the underlying collateral that is securing the loans that they give is of interest to them.
Yeah.
For strategic reasons, right? So they will issue insane terms, and the countries will accept those terms because they're desperate for funding.
Yeah.
And we thought from a satirical standpoint, it's interesting to look at like how that works in reality and how you could protocolize that to service these more risky assets within crypto, and sort of make a commentary on this gross practice that has been used for decades to assert US dollar dominance, at this government level. And sort of we realize that the risk isn't as bad in crypto because there's no counterparty risk like in the real world. Like you do over collateralized loans and you don't have to enforce them with violence.
Yeah.
but we love to lean into the idea that we do. So, you know, people see us at conferences in these red suits, and sometimes we have like gold AK-47s, and we get around and, you know, act as if we're debt collectors,
Yeah.
that are enforcing the rules of the IMF protocol. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like this has become my obsession. Like I've been working on this for the last year, and I've been able to work with some really talented friends of mine, and sort of now I've taken the lead on the project, and had a really good fun time with the marketing and just the branding, and created something I'm really proud of. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it works.
That's the best part. I have to admit, for those who don't know, I have been in the Telegram chat, and I don't think I've come across someone who's more active in a Telegram chat for the last year, apart from Gami. And the stuff that they come up with in terms of slogans and overall presence is hilarious. Did you want to talk about a few of the stunts that you guys have done at some of these crypto conventions that you've gone to?
Yeah, I'd love to actually. There's like, I guess a good place to start is getting kicked out of Devcon and banishment by the Ethereum Foundation, which was like, it's so ridiculous. Like, we got in trouble for shilling, but we weren't even shilling. We were just like in these red suits, and they look fucking great, man. Like, I sourced the exact same ones that Slipknot use, and I've seen Slipknot in concert a few times, and they're a band that I love. Like, I'm a
Yep.
bit of a muso, and metal's one of my interests, and I found these, got them like screen printed with our logo and all this sort of stuff, and we just wear them everywhere. And
Yep.
we were at Devcon, and everyone come talking to us. They just swarm around us like, "Hey, what are these suits? And what are you guys building?" And then, of course, like they'd say, "How do we get in touch?" So we'd hand out a business card. And the Ethereum Foundation were not happy with that. So at the end of the last day, after we'd been in trouble the 2 days prior, this guy basically screamed at me, like yelling at me, and I'm just sort of like laughing in his face. And then we got escorted out of the building by the security, at the request of the Ethereum Foundation. And I just thought that was hilarious, because like we've built common goods infrastructure on Ethereum that anyone can use, and it's like not okay with with the organizers of Ethereum, Ethereum's Devcon. So we sort of were inspired by that, and the sort of stuff that we've done more recently, for example, at ETH Denver, where they loved us,
Yeah.
was the first day, it was just more so like the first day that we did an activation there. It was mostly the hackathon, and it was mostly the people who run the venue, which is like a cattle sales arena,
Yep.
you know, similar to like where they have the Easter show and stuff in Australian cities. And yeah, they loved us, let us do whatever we want. And then the second day, when it was more about the commercial stuff, and it shouldn't be called ETH Denver anymore, it should be called Crypto Denver, because like every other L1 had a fucking booth, but there were not that many like booths that were relevant.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that we weren't paying the 30 to 100 grand or whatever it is to get a booth. We'd just done these trucks that were outside to look like cash vehicles, like an armored truck. And we'd parked them right in the way where everyone could see it, and they come up and talk to us and give them some information. And yeah, they were unhappy with us, even though the venue were fine with it, and told us that we had to leave and kicked us out. So that night, we found a car park where everyone would pass on their way into the venue, and it was attached to the Denver Coliseum, which is a big sporting arena.
Yeah.
And so we made fake Denver Coliseum signage and put it on these barriers, you know, the orange witches hats and all that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
made a reserved car spot for for the staff of the Coliseum. And and then just next morning just drove in with our truck and ran over the cones, and it was our spot. So we will stop at nothing, man. Like we're just getting started, and it's fun.
Yeah. For those listening, I was fortunate enough to see the suits live, like before they had the IMF logos. And if you're looking at the screen on YouTube in the recording, it's literally those. They are very premium jumpsuits with the IMF logo. And yeah, they're not like from the $2 shop. They're actually like a really good fitting outfit.
They're amazing. Like I'm thinking about wearing mine every day in winter just to stay in work mode, you know?
Yeah, grinding through it. Which event was the one? Because the video is like, there's two videos that are ingrained in my head. It's the one where you guys, I think it's you're walking as if you're a GTA character out to the armored vehicle, and then there's one where Side Rides is just like partying, and he's just like non-stop like dancing, like full on energy in the IMF suit. And these things are hot, right? Like they're so thick that like you'd sweat up a storm in them, I feel.
Yeah, so like polar opposites, like the GTA video stuff was just like me acting out in public in Denver in the cold, and then in the heat when we're in Bangkok, Thailand, it was like 43 degrees Celsius, just like sweating our asses off, and we crashed every party from the rooftop Infinex party with Berachain to the official opening and closing parties of basically every major brand that was involved at Devcon with their side events. And yeah, we would just get up on stage in front of the DJ and dance. And Side Rides loves a good dance. You know, he's actually like a semi-professional dancer, and he does like Greek, his traditional Greek dancing. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, he's got no shame.
Yeah,
and neither do I.
Rides.
So yeah, we love some of that action.
Yeah, I've not been fortunate enough to go to these events, but holy crap, have I laughed at some of the stories that have come out of it from the IMF. Because there was a period of time you guys were causing a fuss, but then was it Jesse from Base? He made time for you to have a chat. Like he came over to you, or you went over to him at one of the events. I can't remember.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was swarmed by all these people wanting to talk to him, and then we'd known each other from Nouns for a fair while, and
yeah,
I was like one of the first people to start using Base. Like I migrated NounsDAO to Base. I think NounsDAO might actually be the first DAO on Base. I'll have to double check, but yeah, he just sort of like he spotted me, and then he just like came over and gave me a big hug, and it's like all these bystanders like, who the fuck is this guy?
Because you're in full IMF suit as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we actually talked to him really early on with the project because it's really easy for us to support L2s.
Yeah.
So we only have to deploy these vaults. So we'll roll that out like in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, he was like really helpful to us at the start because I'd linked him up with Bob Burnquist actually because Coinbase and Base wanted to do a bunch of stuff in Brazil.
Yeah.
And Bob still has a house in Brazil and does business there. So I guess he and I were already in touch, and started chatting about IMF stuff. So I got to circle back and chat to him amidst all the all the flack that he's copying at the moment with all the content coin stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been having a bit of fun with that as well.
Yeah, that's not been on my agenda to talk about, but maybe we can dive into that with some of the future questions. I just had a question because you mentioned you've been fortunate enough to take the lead on the IMF project. So pivoting probably away from maybe the funniest sort of stuff that we get to see on the outside, but what's it actually like building a crypto project like the IMF, and then what are some of the best lessons you've learned from building the crypto project? You could use NounsDAO or IMF in that example as well.
Yeah, I think IMF's probably a really good example because it's been this year-long battle of like solving hard technical problems.
Yeah.
with really smart people with very strong opinions who are also very close friends. So it's been like every kind of emotion or logic that you could dream of. We've been through it in the last year,
Yeah.
and it's been fun and it's been a nightmare at the same time. But it's also opened up a lot of new opportunities for the younger people involved, and you know, like our interns and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like Miffy and
Um,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and Swish
Yeah.
from the US, and so it's kind of like it's the best of everything, you know. It's like it's fun, it's tumultuous, it's scary, and then on top of that, you know, you raise some money in ETH, and then like ETH goes down, and like you got to manage the treasury, and then you're borrowing against it, and there's liquidations, and there's like
Oh wow.
stabling up to avoid volatility. It's just like that, everything all happening at once and in public, and it it's honestly like not everyone's cut out for it, but I enjoy it,
Yeah.
and I know that everyone else has, and it's brought us all closer because we've been through some pretty tough times as well, where we've sort of, you know, we did a V1 and it was not very successful.
Mm.
But then at the same time, when we were in Denver promoting the upcoming launch of the V2, we met a guy, and this is just where I would end this little question is, we met this guy, David NYC, who is like in our community,
Yeah.
Zen Shorts, I think. He did, he got like into the V1 of IMF back when it was a different product. I won't go into the details, but basically he'd gone leveraged long on chain with Pepe, and basically clipped the bottom and then like rode to the top, and like nailed this trade and got like an extra 50% gain because he was longer, you know, being
Yeah.
leverage looped. And he came and found me and invited me to this fucking sick party that he threw. It was so good. And the way he found out about IMF was he was at ETHCC in I think it was Brussels in Belgium,
Yeah.
and he was at the airport, and these two guys saw him wearing a Nouns t-shirt and came up to him and said, "Bro, have you?" These two Turkish guys, and they said, "Have you seen what Gami from Nouns is building?" And that's how he
What?
found out about IMF. Yeah.
That's
And
wild.
I used to spend lots of time in Europe. So like in my early crypto days, so like I have all these random friends, and they must have realized, you know, whatever, and put two and two together. He used the protocol, and then his story that he told us, the short of it was, made a bunch more money than I ever dreamed, and I took my girlfriend to Disneyland, and that was her dream, and it fucking ruled. And I was like, dude, that is sick. Like, it doesn't even matter about the size, it doesn't matter about anything. The fact that you used something and got a benefit from it, and we built that shit, incredible. And so he's been a really great person to have in the community, along with yourself and any others. But that kept us going, you know, like we were really pretty down when B1 wasn't what we'd hoped it had been, and the technical challenges were different to what we expected, and it's sort of all these trials and tribulations sort of up to what it is. So yeah, we're really proud of the last 12 months.
Yeah, and it's all coming down to May 6th, right? This is the go date, the launch date.
Yeah, so we're currently soft launched. So if you have Mog coin, Mog is Mog, you can come in, deposit Mog, you can borrow USDS, which is the rebrand of DAI, by USDS by Sky. It's also confusing, the rebrand, but anyway, it's a
Yeah.
stable coin, a very nice liquid stable coin. And we're servicing just Mog at the moment while we iron out all the kinks with the front end if we run into any bugs. And then on May 6th, we actually open it up to everyone. So the phase 2 of the protocol which is the pools component. We're now live with the borrow lend. The pools component will go live, and that enables two really cool things. It enables any token to come along and unlock credit, and it also enables whales or anyone with large positions to automate their DCA exit strategy, so they're not selling, and basically the exhaust of them slowly exiting their position helps to bolster the lending market. So we've created a real flywheel, and it's a big thank you to Morpho and the infrastructure that they've provided us with, allowed us to delete 60% of the code we'd written. So a lot less risk, a lot less that had to be audited, and it's just dandy, you know. It's crazy how well it worked out.
Yeah, you were talking about that adjustment before we went live. So just a little bit further back, when you were talking about some of the tough decisions, dealing with close friends and strong opinions, do you have any examples of where you had to sort of navigate those situations, and what were the outcomes of those situations?
Yeah, definitely. I guess like what comes to mind the most is, you know, you have people with various types of experience and very strongly held opinions, and for good reason. And you have to make crypto is kind of like the decisions you make are really tough, because there are a lot of decisions that you need to make that are final. You know, it's like if we choose this thing, we have to live with it, because once it's deployed, that's the way it is, you know. And you can do things in these different sort of modular ways behind proxies and stuff that make some of those decisions a bit easier. But when you're in a team of people who do really care about those core OG values of like decentralization, trustlessness, permissionless, all that stuff, you pride yourself on those decisions that you make. So, you know, we've run into all sorts of debates and arguments, but we always end up making decisions we're proud of together as a team.
Yeah.
And then we've also like had, you know, the challenges of like an incredible extra idea that came up, and you know, like sort of like working on an additional project, like some of the team. And at first, like it was like, oh man, this is crazy. Like we can't be doing this other thing as well, right? And then we learn, well, because of where we're at now and the additional people who've joined the team, it actually makes everything more coherent and more efficient and more agile. So the people part is hard. Crypto really, you know, it's like, for example, the office where we work in here in Sydney, like I'd probably bet that like every single person in the building has either autism or ADHD or a combination of both. Like it's filled with a lot of smart people and a lot of people who are very inquisitive and deeply curious about things, and that comes with its challenges. But you know, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it for what you get out the other side. So yeah.
Because you talk about the transition from V1 to V2. And from the outside, for someone that hasn't been, I just know that there was a V1 and then that there was a V2, and a little bit more of a presence in terms of like the marketing and the community getting a lot larger and things like that. But was the Morpho back end a part of that migration? Like what did you kind of need to address from the V1 to get to the V2?
Yeah, so with the V1, what we'd originally done is we had a stable coin, which was backed by these volatile tokens. At that point, it was backed by Pepe, because you know we had to do a proof of concept, and we learned that was a huge responsibility, because you have to do certain actions in the early stages that help to assure like that it doesn't depeg a ridiculous amount. Like it was a soft peg stablecoin, so it's not like It's not like you're just like accepting deposits in a bank and then saying like, this is valued at $1, click the mint button. We were actually accepting collateralized debt positions in Pepe and then having to like use our infrastructure to determine price and then like, run these like ongoing arbitrage trades that would stabilize the price. And to be frank with you, it was a fucking nightmare. Like it was just so much work and like always had to have someone on because until these things are really liquid, they're not worth they're not worth their salt. It's like it's only going to work if it gets to a certain scale. And so we took a different approach where we didn't need the stable anymore, and we started building this like custom lending protocol. And then we learnt about an update to Morpho with their Morpho Blue protocol, which is effectively a factory for lending markets, which means it's a protocol on Ethereum where you go to it and you give it the parameters you need, and it deploys an immutable contract that runs on their infrastructure and can't be fucked with. It's just like you get exactly what it is, and that's how it will operate.
Wow.
And because of that, it's kind of like when you have an L2 on Ethereum and you get like the Ethereum network's security.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were like, fuck, like this is awesome because now we can run this multi-market, which uses the underlying infrastructure of Morpho while providing us the composability and flexibility to actually service all these assets that are way further down the risk curve.
Yeah.
And then also on the liquidation side, instead of us having to like be capitalized to be able to like, purchase a debt position to liquidate it and then like, pay back the debt and make a small profit, Morpho handles it differently, which we don't have to be capitalized. We don't have to get we don't have to use like flash loans like Aave pioneered. Instead, Aave will just say, look, we'll give you the debt position, and this is all fully on chain and permissionless and trustless. And it's like, as long as you pay off that debt and effectively liquidate the position, you can have the position for free in this same transaction. So you no longer need to have a liquidator with tons of money. It's just like, the liquidator can literally be broke and it can still effectively liquidate. And on top of that, like not only does our bot and our backup for the bot have this like beautiful system that it operates in, it also is part of an open market. So if anyone else wants to compete with our liquidator, they can come along and liquidate even better than we do. It's just like everything is markets based. There's no governance. It's just like it's pure DeFi, and we're really excited by that. Like it's just so in line with everything that we like, and it's not just meme coins. Like we're international meme fund to poke fun at the real or the off-chain IMF, but we can service any token on Ethereum mainnet, and then we'll roll out support to all the L2s. And I think there's just so much potential for this.
Yeah.
And there's so many different applications. So it's just getting started, and I've never worked on anything like this before, it's like it's really taken a lot of boxes for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds like you're right in the thick of it with like these decisions around a protocol, marketing, and then being the lead of the project. What does IMF success look like to you long term? What are some of the things that you're benchmarking your success, and what are some of the things that you would love to see IMF achieve in the future?
Yeah, this answer is gonna seem weirdly specific and less about like money and TVL and size and all that sort of stuff. So starting with money and TVL and size and all that sort of stuff, like where we are now, it's like I would love to see IMF do for the long tail of assets the same thing that Maker did for Ethereum.
Yeah.
It set a new floor when Maker was you know, it was the first DeFi protocol, right? It was like it's a crazy success. It was directly responsible for a lot of the appreciation in ETH's price. You know, we ran from like $200 to $4,000 in the uptake of Maker
Yeah.
collateralizing DAI stablecoins. So I would love to see, like, in the short to medium term, that IMF like accelerates the what I'm calling like the bifurcation or the splitting of blue chips and dog shit. So I'd love to see I'd love to see our protocols incentivize the sucking out of liquidity from all the shit into the good community coins.
The Egyptian god
Like
cards, right?
exactly like you were saying, you know, we got Pepe, Morgan, Ticker, Bitcoin. I would love that too. I know there's been interest from like the SPX community, and then you've got like a lot of whales who can just like never sell. But now with our protocol, they'll be able to do something positive sum that's not red candle, printing.
Mm.
So yeah, like I would love for it to sort of like help a lot of communities. Then second order effects of that are like it changes the way that you think about funding things. So if you're like a meme coin team and you have like, say you're the guys from Mog and you have like a little bit of coins set aside and you want to fund, you know, growth or like a new listing on an exchange or the creation of some content or a merch drop or like whatever. Right now you have one option, and that's to sell.
Yeah.
You know, and like you can't sell because it doesn't align with the culture. The culture is never sell. And the culture is like believe in the community and keep pushing. And that's antithetical to the fact that when you're a startup, you need to fund growth. You don't want to fund loyalty, you want to fund growth.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I see this sort of headed. I've got a Nouns proposal up at the moment, which is requesting a $420,000 loan from Nouns, where they would deposit fully on chain, like no intervention from not even a multi-sig. Like if this proposal goes through, executes and deposits into the protocol, and that will get boot into the market to bootstrap further the lending for MOG borrowers or MOG depositors who want to borrow stablecoins. And so like the way that I actually thought about the Nouns proposal was to actually present like a future vision where it's like Nouns currently just gets money from these auctions and the treasury is drying up, and there's this problem where they give out grants, which I call grants handouts, because you just hand them out and then they disappear. And no value ever comes back, and that's why the Nouns NFTs are just trending to zero. Because there's no closed feedback loop. So I see that there's an opportunity that like using credit, just like in the real world, it's a way to fund business activity, and it closes the loop. It brings back that accountability where if you don't bring value back to the people that funded you, you get liquidated. You have skin in the game, and you need to act on it. So it might be a combination of things, but I think it'll be really cool to see credit become a small part of funding and it be there for the sake of the longevity of the projects that are funding all these crazy ideas. So yeah, I think so. Maybe like an iteration on DAOs in a way, and dream big.
I love it. I have been given a little bit of an overview of what Salutary is. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong from Dimitri.
It's all good. Salutary.
Salutary. I knew I'd get it wrong. My understanding of this is that it is... actually, do you know what? Because you've partnered with these guys, you're one of the first early projects too. Did you want to help us understand why IMF is choosing to partner with Salutary and what that sort of means for the future of IMF?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Nap and I were discussing the dark art of tokenomics, which, you know, it's a stupid word. It's not even a real thing. But it's like everyone who starts a crypto project is like, if you have a token because you want to decentralize at some point, or you want the ability for the protocol to be, you know, governed or owned by someone else, a token is a really good way to do that. You know, it's a lot more native, and especially if your protocol is fully on chain. So we were like, okay, we need a solution, but we're building for weight, not vote. So when we talk about like markets, if you look at equities, most people think that when you buy equities, you're buying votes over the company.
Yeah.
But you're not. Most equities don't equal votes. Some do. And also most equities don't pay dividends. Some do.
Yeah.
And the reason that this is interesting is because when you're building for weight, you're thinking long term. You're not thinking like short term attention seeking. You're thinking, how are we going to create value? And so what Salutary does is it's a protocol that makes tokens behave similar to equities, in the sense that they're not a vote, it's not governance theatre, it's not all this bullshit, it's the threat of takeover.
Yeah.
And that's where most assets in equity markets get value, is because big dicks come swinging and they want to make moves. And if they own enough of your stock, they can effectively take over your company. And that's, you know, it's really important. Like when you think about stuff like, you know, tech stocks are not paying dividends because they're not Coca-Cola who just want to like distribute loyalty points to their investors so they never leave, because they're, you know, like Coca-Cola is not on a growth trajectory. It's just on a steady, you know, it's on a steady path to longevity. It's already been around for fucking 100 years or whatever. But when it comes to like tech stocks and other things like startups, which, you know, are obviously not publicly listed, the idea of distributing a dividend or a revenue share, which a lot of people in crypto talk about, is fucking retarded, because all you should spend your money on is growth. And then when you reach a reasonable scale, either get acquired or you rethink the economics of the valuation of your company and how these things might sort of turn out. So we've really like decided early on that we're like, we want the value of our token to be directly tied to the utility of the protocol.
Yeah.
And the value that we provide to the people that use it. And look, the token's down a bunch because we've been building for a year. But we think by partnering with Dimitri and Salutary that this is the first of its kind. And their protocol will effectively manage the admin keys over ours. And what that means is they have a vested interest in us, so that them enforcing these rights at a legal level as well as a protocol level are in their best interest. And they are there to basically enforce the ability for someone to acquire us. So say we're performing really badly and like maybe a private equity firm or something were to come along and say, let's acquire this, we can turn the ship around, that's possible. Or if we were to be a runaway success and someone wanted to purchase the protocol because it generates great revenue, that's also possible. And where it's unique to like your backroom deals of you know most sort of off-chain markets is the fact that we have a token, and if you really wanted to take us over, you could do your best to acquire 51%. Or you could work out, you know, any other number of deals that are possible with tokens, you know, that all sorts of options there. And we're just excited to like say, you know what, like we're not juicing our token with like fake, you know, incentives and crazy tokenomic emission Ponzi-nomic schemes. It's like if you own a piece, a number of tokens, you own a piece of the protocol. And if it's successful and it's generating great revenue, then it's obviously going to be a really premium price token. And that's the bet that we're making. You know, with all the revenue that the protocol does generate, which is we take a 6.9% performance fee on all interest generated.
Yep.
So if borrowers were paying, you know, 20% interest, we would take 6.9% of that 20%. So it's in our best interest to just do everything we can to make this, you know, a successful protocol that lots of people use, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm lacking in education around what that might mean. So I'll do my best to try and give an example. If I'm on the right track, just let me know. But
No
essentially,
worries.
what you're saying is that if the protocol's performing, if someone comes in with a lot of money and buys out a majority stake, they get more authority over the direction of the protocol. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess the shortest way to describe that would be that they could decide where the revenue goes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
early stages, there's only one thing you should ever do with revenue, and it's spend it on growth. So,
Yeah.
you know, onboarding users and all that sort of stuff. But then if it matures and gets to a point like, you know, say a protocol like Uniswap or Aave, or any of these sort of big cash cows, you may start to change tack. You may be like, look, we're at a point now where it's stable. We've reached a bit of a ceiling. Let's focus on loyalty now and make sure people are with us for the long term. Let's distribute revenue to the holders or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's purely just to give the majority stakeholder the ability to do what they think is right
Yeah.
by the protocol and the people who own it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I
Because
guess
we've
that,
seen what
yeah.
happens with governance. Like governance in crypto, it's all bullshit. You know, it's like, and it's easily captured. Unfortunately, a lot of the governance that we know in crypto already.
Yeah, I think I've seen a meme where it's like should the founders use the proceeds of the treasury to buy themselves a Lamborghini, and it's like 92% favor yes, but it's only like 2% of voters because they own the supply. And it's like, what color Lamborghini should it be? And I think it takes the piss out of the fact that misuse of power or misuse of funds or weight or what have you. So even though
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a left curve or maybe a mid curve at this and trying to put it together, I can see where it just clicks long term, and I get to see a live example of where this happens, and then I'm like, that makes sense. That's why they're doing it, because of these reasons. So that's pretty exciting as well, because you're kind of in the same notion, saying, yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this protocol, but because we're partnering with Dimitri, there's a chance that someone could just buy us out and then just completely change the direction of where the protocol goes, which probably takes a lot of courage to do, to be honest, because it is your baby at the end of the day that you've put so much time and effort into.
yeah, that's right. And like, it's the kind of thing where if someone did want to purchase 51% of the tokens, you know, it's going to have an outsized impact on the price as well. So it's like it's a system that sort of like takes a lot of the complexity and makes it more simple. But just like an interest rate model for a lending market, there are certain levers that can be tweaked and twisted and pulled on to really get this to balance out to where it needs to be. And it's all about accountability at the end of the day. There's there, you know, it's basically putting everything on the line with the values that we have and saying like, we believe we should take a bold bet because we're proud of what we built and we think it deserves that kind of a conviction as well.
Yeah, oh, that's really nice. To round off the IMF discussion before we move on to some more sensitive topics like Ethereum, did you have anything else that you wanted to sort of bring people's attention to about IMF, or maybe some of the work that you've done, or also maybe an opportunity for some shout outs for some of the people that have worked on IMF that we may not know about?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'd want to shout out Pablos, who is my marketing mentor. He's a crazy guy with some incredible stories. Bit older, a gent from London. By older, I mean a bit older than me.
Yeah.
And when you get the chance, ask him about his story with Banksy. He met Banksy in the earliest days, and Pablos was the owner of Banksy.com because he
Yeah.
hated Banksy at the time. Ask him about how he flipped a $10 domain into a $100,000 painting.
Wow. That's crazy.
And just crazy and publicity stunts expert. Like his history and his work, it's incredible. Shout out to my intern Swish, my co-founding partners in IMF, Nap and Joya, Clouted, and Side Rides. And then shout out to the chief economist at the IMF, Econ Degen on Twitter, and another of our interns, Miffy. And then just like everyone in the community, especially Swiss, the host of the show today.
Yeah, he does a lot of hard work. Just says DM every morning and retweets all the good stuff. So yeah, very hard work. Glad I got a shout out actually.
It's funny how we ended up with DM instead of GM, and that was just because of like some weird spammers coming into our group. And there was one point where they were like nude women.
Chanya.
Send me a DM.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because we would get the bots posting, and then they would be like, or like maybe partnership requests from. I think there were some genuine people. Before I go on this tangent, I think there were some genuine people that were in the chat that were looking to provide value. You might be able to speak more to that, but yeah, every now and then we'd get someone pop in, post some sort of thing requesting a DM, and then we would just respond by saying DM, and then they would start like thumbs up reacting as if we're like encouraging them to like DM us. And so yeah, I reckon they would have been pretty annoyed with that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But yeah, if anyone wanted to join us at the IMF Credit Cartel, that's how we describe ourselves. You can just check us out at imf.bz. And yeah, the Credit Cartel thing, just for reference to, is, we realized at a certain point that what we'd built with our protocol was a credit union or a member-owned bank. And we were like, that's not spicy enough. We need a crypto-native credit union, and that's a Credit Cartel. So IMF Credit Cartel is a fun place to be if anyone wants to come and join us.
Yeah, I think the branding and the marketing is probably doesn't get enough credit, because I think the words like never sell, credit cartel, there's
bank the unbankable.
Yeah, bank the unbankable.
Credit is a weapon.
Yeah, all this stuff, it just rolls off the tongue, and yeah, that's some impressive work from the IMF team. So well done there.
Yeah, man, Pablos are pretty good at copywriting, so and cooking content as well. We've been enjoying that. Heap of fun.
Yeah, I love the memes as well that come out of it. Like, I remember the one where you DM'd CZ, and then he just replied with like a question mark, and then we just started this thread on X of just like, you would post the interaction, and you'd tag CZ, and everyone just started commenting like the question mark, and yeah, that was quite funny.
Sent him another DM just the other day, actually, like 2 days ago. He read it and he sent another question mark.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm pretty sure it's love. It's love.
It would be very funny if he started using it, but it is that sort of protocol, right? Everyone on Ethereum, and like you said, the other layers will be able to jump on and leverage their choice of meme, which I think is really
That's
cool.
for sure.
Pivoting, because you mentioned quite a while ago that your interest in Ethereum around trust assumptions and the fact that it was built out to like a really good standard, and not many other chains could really compete with that. What does Ethereum's future look like? I know that there's some currently bad sentiment around it. Do you think people are missing bigger picture stuff with Ethereum where it's currently at?
Yeah, I think so, big time. Actually, there's been a few. Actually, a new DeFi dad, the Edge podcast that came out today. I don't remember the gent that's on it. But anyway, they're talking about sort of like the fundamentals of ETH and how good they are at the moment,
Yeah.
and the actual real adoption that it has. So, the episode was with Ryan Berkman's, but you just have to go to a website like rwa.xyz and or XYZ for the US audience. The numbers just sort of paint the picture. Like the majority of value, whether it's stable coins, real world assets, credit, commodities, institutional alternative funds, corporate bonds, US Treasury debt, stocks, whatever, is on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Like you look at the charts and you're like, how is this even a question? And I I just think it's because crypto is inherently cycles based, and this time around the sort of 4-year halvening cycle might not have played out exactly how people expected.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's had a really strong narrative because of the sailor trade and like a lot of the institutional adoption, and the potential for like empirical shift at the like nation state level and all this sort of shit. Like it's all like macro alignment for digital gold and all that sort of stuff. But I really I really do see, Ethereum as internet money, as the financial layer for basically the future of all sorts of things that we do. Um, I wrote like a manifesto maybe 2.5 years ago called the Hypercommons Manifesto,
Oh, cool.
and it sort of touches on what was that? Sorry.
I said, oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, well, it's probably it's probably not very cool, but it sort of talks about, um, previous to that, Jacob, the founder of Zora, had written this piece called Hyperstructures, which I recommend checking out at jacob.energy. And then another guy that I had a bit of a, Twitter Farcaster friendship with, Light. He wrote a piece, Hypercultures, and then I wrote Hypercommons, and then a bunch of people sort of put that together as the Hyper Stack. And it's very much just like inspired by like early internet, where you have like, you start to build these networks that understand context, and then you end up with all these, you know, interrelational pieces of society that are just like hyper contextualized and deliver a lot of value at a low cost.
Yeah.
And it's a positive sum symbiotic thing. And like I have a lot of friends who are like big soul guys, and like that's fine. Like I use Solana a bit, and I use a lot of different networks. I'm seed investor in Rise, L2, and like different stuff like that. And the thing that like I always stick to is just like I'm thinking like intergenerational scale, like, which is kind of stupid because like I'm not going to be able to take profits after I'm dead. But I like to think about like, I grew up reading science fiction. Like I really like this stuff. It's really interesting to me. And Ethereum is well positioned to sort of serve that really long term vision.
Yeah.
It's and all these like other scalable solutions, like they're going to have to scale with additional layers at some point anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think Ethereum is the hypercommons, this vision that I had for a positive sum world. Like it is the infrastructure for society. It's like it's a civilizational layer, that the whole point of humans. Like I really recommend reading a book called Non-Zero,
Yeah.
the logic of humankind or something, I think it's called, but by Robert Wright. Fantastic book. And it looks at the whole history of us in terms of like our evolution from beginning to now. And what happens is systems get in really, really complex and really, really hard to understand. And by extension, you could say hard to price.
Yeah.
and then the positive sum prevails, and the system that is the most positive sum is always what works out as the winner. So while Solana have a vision of being like decentralized NASDAQ, Ethereum have the vision of being like the network that coordinates the entire human race at scale.
Yeah.
Through multiple generations. Like, I just think it's hard to price something like that, and the market likes to make money, so I just sit on my hands while my ETH base is bleeding.
Yeah, I feel similar as well. I feel like the reasons why I like Ethereum are because of that long-term planning that they put so much time and effort into that I don't even understand, but just kind of on face value go, yeah, that kind of sounds like it'll be around long-term. You mentioned Zora, and I also wanted to ask about Farcaster as well, because I kind of I think for me, like, Farcaster is a good example of the stickiness of Ethereum users wanting to kind of still do something like a social network on top of Ethereum. And then Zora, of which you took incredible amount of patience with me because I was still learning it, but you were telling me about Zora and how they were building out their tech as well. And I feel like this sort of innovation that you get excited about and other people get excited about is only really, from what I can see, on Ethereum, right? So yeah, so like, what's your experience been like with Farcaster and Zora?
Yeah, I think Farcaster in particular, I was really lucky, like in the early stages with both Zora and Farcaster. Actually, like I built a just a WordPress plugin that like took Zora, and made it easy for people to like put a NFT auction on their website, for example.
Yeah.
And was just an early adopter, and I have like 23,000 followers or something on Zora just because of like being there early.
Yeah.
And the same sort of thing happened on Farcaster, where I was in the recommended follows when people were joining, and that huge, influx that they had.
Yeah.
I don't know, last year or whatever it was. And the reason that I was interested in those places, like I think of them as places, like, and scenes, is because of like they're just like Ethereum. Like I'm speaking mostly to Farcaster at this point because like Zora is sort of just, it changes a lot all the time, but Farcaster is it's a base level protocol for social graphing, and it's like you can do so many things on there. Like every account has a wallet. Like every person on there can interact on chain within a post. Like you can run an app in a post. Like you can deploy mini apps that, it's like the dream that like wallets were trying to sell us like years ago, about how like the browser inside the wallet would be this like gateway into Web3.
Yeah.
And all this sort of like hyperbole, but like that's literally what Farcaster is. Like you can just participate in so many things, and as a builder, it's the easiest way to get direct feedback because you don't have all these additional steps of trying to get them out of a social network that's fueled by ads like Twitter.
Yeah.
Where you've got to like, first you got to figure out how to get them the fuck off the platform, which is hard. Like sometimes when you link out from Twitter, not only do your links get penalized and they don't get any traction or views, but also the first time you click a link, most times it won't open it in a way where you can share the link or open it in like Safari on your phone.
Wow.
It'll just be in this like weird captured fucking window. And so on Farcaster, you don't have that problem. You just like, whatever client people use, Warpcast is the most famous, popular one. They can just interact directly with your protocol from your post. So it's exciting. Like IMF will launch a mini app on there pretty soon, and it's just like you basically just like paste a snippet of code into your your app and it's a mini app. You know, everything's composable. So there's that reason where it attracts builders that like are really thinking about, you know, all the experiments that they want to try, and they're just doing it. And then something like Zora is one of those people, which is Jacob, who just, despite what people say or if they hate on what he's doing, is just like who fucking cares? I'm doing it. Like,
Yeah.
this is the experiment. Like, deal with it, and we'll learn from it. And sometimes you disagree with it, and then you respect him for that. So, and you know, he's someone from Sydney who has an insane history. Like, he was literally like fucking around with Ethereum. His dad's like an OG cryptographer, and just like randomly Coinbase DM'd him and were like, "Hey, want to come to, you know, the US and work for Coinbase?" And he's like, "Yes." Like, and he was young as fuck.
That's so
And they
cool.
just plucked him out. And then he is actually the product manager who brought USDC to market with Balaji Srinivasan. So, like, Sydney has this like underworld of crypto OGs, like you know, developers like Boki Puba, whose code that he would just write and publish on GitHub is used in so many things. Like, he has code that was used in Uniswap, the deploy Uniswap. He has code that made up a chunk of CryptoPunks. And because of that, he was the first person to ever claim a CryptoPunk that wasn't on Lava Labs team. So it's just like, Sydney has this underground scene, and they're OGs who've had really big impact. And so I think they've influenced me a lot in wanting to just like be in the place where they would hang out and where they would sort of fuck with things and try to break stuff and upset people. Because like, you learn a lot when you do things that are divisive. And if you just, like, everyone always says, like, you just got to build what the users want, like talk to lots of users. And it's like, Steve Jobs didn't talk to any fucking users, man. He was like, this is a great idea and I fucking believe in it, and yous are all wrong.
Yeah, it's like, I think the computer should have this, and Steve Jobs is like, get out of my office. Like, I'm not listening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, meandering answer, but it's one of those questions where I don't know the answer off the top of my head. And it is just like, the kind of people that you fuck with, just think about where they would fuck around. Just like, what are they playing with? What are they tinkering? And that's the couple of examples.
Yeah, this probably ties into the next question quite well. And I was going to ask, are there any people that you look up to in the crypto space, and why?
Damn, that's a good question. There's so many. A really big one would have to be Boki Puba. Just because, like, he's like such a giving person. Like, he's an older gentleman, rides around on a push bike smoking weed all day. He's just like, he's such a dude. Like, with him in Bangkok in some random place, just like smoking a doobie, having a good time. And he's super inquisitive, and he's done so much for people for free. Like, he just puts out things that he does and lets people use it.
Yeah.
And his workshops that he used to hold, well, he still does some from time to time, like with different events, but there were these workshops that he held back in the day that I would always sort of check out. And because of him, I found other people like Daniel Barr, who was like an early leader of like the blockchain community at, I think, UNSW. And so I would like literally just like go to universities and pretend I was a student just to like check out the workshops or like watch someone talk about crypto shit.
That's wholesome.
I really like people like that. And I really like people who, you know, they're not doing unethical or immoral things, but they're towing the line of like what's allowed, you know, like Ross Ulbricht. Like, I met his mum and I really want to meet him one day, but like what he did, like, he got in heaps of trouble, but he was pardoned in the end, right? And he built the Silk Road, and it had incredible market fit, product market fit. Like it was like, that's the reason I heard about crypto, was because of the Silk Road. It was like, just, yeah, people are not afraid to sort of like take crazy risks or be what I call risk-tarded.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like you will take unnecessary risk because of how curious you are, but you still hold on to your morals and your ethical values. So people like that.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't
I'm
realize that
obsessed
about.
with this shit, eh? Like, I'm fucking obsessed, man. Like, I have such a crazy relationship with this shit.
I didn't realize that there were so many Giga Chads from Sydney. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and I admire the people I work with too, you know, like Nap and the guys, and like they're superstars like outside of crypto, and then they're here. Like, what are you even doing here? Like they were absolute superstars, and then they're in here. And then like another friend of mine, Adrian Chaff and Cheney, he's in Solana. Like, he's not even an Ethereum person.
Yeah.
But we met early on, and just the way he thinks about things. So I think, yeah, there are so many people that I really appreciate.
Yeah. Oh, that's wholesome.
And look up to.
Shout out to Jacob from Zora, who decided not to build out the functionality on Android phones. Definitely didn't make my learning experience any more difficult with the with Zora. I got there in the end though, from the DMs that you sent me. I did set up an account. I did bridge some ETH across, and I did start buying some random things. So I'm experimenting. I'm slowly experimenting with Farcaster as well. But yeah, it is crazy that you've built up like a huge online presence within Farcaster and Zora, just from literally just what you said, from being early and just going over there and experimenting.
Yeah, I'm the guy where someone deploys a new app and you're like, oh, that looks dangerous, and I'll be like, I've already got a fresh wallet ready, let's go. Yeah, I'm just always curious to see what's around the corner.
Yeah.
And get a bit of insight. So yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I had a question as well, because you talked about some of these people that you look up to that are superstars outside of crypto. More specifically to yourself, Gami, is there a life outside of crypto for you?
Yeah, big time. Sorry about the... is there an echo again?
Nah, you're all good. You're all good. You get another drink?
Okay. Yeah, I was just heading back into the kitchen. So, yeah, there's actually a big life outside of crypto. Like, I'm actually more obsessed with music than I am with crypto.
Wow.
Mostly as a listener and a punter. Like my girlfriend, she's an amazing singer songwriter. We have our home together. We've got a sister who's quite a famous musician, used to support people like Sarah Blasco, and tour around country, and she's got like a song that was in a Netflix show called Good Girls, and
Oh, wow.
basically paid the bills for a long time. And then her partner, Matt, is the top dog in sound engineering. So he does live sound for all the biggest names in Australian music, and I'm really fortunate to get to go to like gigs and sit in the sound booth and see like the best people playing music that our country has to offer. And like, Australia's music scene is incredible. You know, like, we have the most like overperforming music industry. Same with sport, you know, like there are certain things that we're good at where we're just so much better at it than the rest of the world. And I think music is definitely one of those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm super biased. But yeah, I often just sit at home with my lady and play music, play guitar,
Yeah.
sing, and nerd out.
That's really
into it.
wholesome. That's really wholesome, man. I'm glad that there's like a, yeah, I can get like really into this outside of crypto, and you're not doing this, 24/7 and just burning yourself out, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's important because like I've always had really keen interests. Like, growing up, I played a hell of a lot of squash. I played a lot of different sports, but I got really good at squash, and I was in like the Australian team to go to the Commonwealth Games when I was young.
That's elite.
And I was a sponsored skateboarder. I love snowboarding. Like I love going to the snow and just getting powder. Basically anything with like risk. Anything that's risky, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super
It's
wholesome.
the risk card thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you were competing at a high level for squash, because that is not an easy sport to compete in. I feel like, I think it, as far as like something that I've tried, squash is up there with something that requires a lot of fitness.
Yeah, Men's Health magazine actually back years ago. There was a cover story because squash really died out in popularity, and it was because of real estate.
Really?
Because squash used to be this like it was a businessman's sport or a business person's sport. So in the city, you'll often find squash courts in the basements of high-rise buildings and stuff. And it's like a deal-making venue, you bash it out on the court. And then like it got really popular in the 80s or 70s and 80s and into the 90s. Early 2000s sort of started to die off because it's a lot of real estate for two people to stand on a court and bash a black rubber ball against the wall. And quite often these venues would have, anywhere up to like 12 or 16 courts. And you can imagine like how big that is, because like a squash court is about the size of half a tennis court.
Yeah.
And it's got 4 walls, and, it's a lot of infrastructure. But I just... that magazine I mentioned, the Men's Health, it was rated the most intense sport overall because of like many factors. But you're on like a sprung timber floor, so it's like it's sprung in the sense that they're timber floorboards, and because they're spaced with the joists underneath a certain amount, it has a little bit of spring.
Yeah.
And you're basically just like running backwards and forwards, stopping, starting, and then like bashing the fuck out of a ball, trying to outdo your opponent. And I won the Australian titles and stuff when I was younger, but I still play today. I just actually broke my ankle playing squash 2 Christmases ago, by the way.
Damn. Like on Christmas Day?
Just before, it was like the 22nd of December.
Damn. Was this like one of these...
No, sorry, the 19th.
Were you at a family event? You were just like hanging out with the fam, and then you were like, you know what, it'd be good if I just went 100 miles an hour to playing this game, and then that's how it happened?
It was actually the grand finals of like not a high level contest, just like a pennant tournament that I'd play in. So like every week you would go and play, and there's teams, and I was like in the grand final and was on the top grade, and this guy was pretty intense, and my body was a bit my body's out of shape at the moment, big time. Like ever since COVID, I just haven't been as active as I used to be.
Yeah.
And I was just like, my mind was racing, and I'm just like, yeah, man, I can take this guy. And I was winning, and I just slipped funny on like a bit of sweat, because you're pissed with sweat, and slipped a bit funny. And then when my shoe caught, I completely rolled my ankle to the floor, and it ripped the tendon clean off along with some of the bone. It was just like, it made this huge like popping noise. It was like crazy.
Jesus Christ. That would have hurt a lot, man. I feel that would have been, yeah.
Yeah. I should have gone to to the hospital, but I actually, because it was like the Christmas party as well for the end of the season, I stayed back and put some ice on, put my foot up, and I had like 4 beers and then drove home.
You just like makeshift fixed it, right? You were just like, you know what, I'm not going to ruin the vibes, all right? I know the direction of this. I'm not going to derail. I'm not going to make this about me. Let me just, a couple beers, ice pack, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, wow.
Most people in my circles sort of know me as the guy that's the last one to go home at most events too. So I was like, it's just in my nature. I've got to hang out till the end.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a commitment to the cause, man. For sure. We've definitely discussed a lot, and you know, just cautious of your time as well, because we're at I think it's almost like 2 hours that we've been on call. I've only got a few.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've only got a few questions left, because this is the best trader I know. Have you made any decisions that you've thought you've been, wow, like this is paid off, this has yielded some really good positive results financially for me?
Yeah, there's a couple, but like one of them's a bit comedic, but it's worth mentioning. I made a 13,500 X once.
Was that the Zora one?
Yeah, it was so stupid. Like, it was just this, like, it was actually an NFT, and it was Zach XBT had minted. So, like, I've chatted with, like, Zach a little bit over the years. Like, in Nouns, like, we donated him a bunch of money at one point. Like, I think we gave him, like, $250,000.
Yeah.
And to, you know, his incredible work that he does, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And he'd like minted one of his investigations as an NFT, and because I was like a Zora power user, I guess I just saw it and I was like, oh, mint a couple of those. And I think I minted it for like 30 cents and sold one of them for $4,000.
Fuck.
And I was like, what the fuck is that, man? Like, how on earth did that happen? And it was awesome, you know. It was like, it was tiny little win in the scheme of things, but
yeah,
it's the best. It's the most X's I've ever gotten. And then the other sort of decisions like that I've made that I'm proud of, when I just do things that are a bit different. So, you know, like I mentioned before, in DeFi summer, I used to race to get, you know, first to deploy like liquidity pools, because people were new to Uniswap. So I'd get into like a token, and they were worried about like centralized exchanges, and I would like get my pre-sale tokens and then just go LP the whole lot. And then like people was really starting to pile into Uniswap.
Yeah.
And there were days where there would be millions of dollars in volume, and I would own like the entire pool. And I just kept doing it until people caught on to that. And then I did a similar thing in the meme coin craziness. You know, I would, like, on base when Clanker was really taken off, they would automatically set up a 1% pool on Uniswap. With the protocol would just always do a 1% pool. So I would like get tokens early and then just set up a 0.3% pool. And because it was a cheaper route, I would get all the volume. So I'd just sit in the token and make fees instead of speculating on the token. And as it went up, it would sell the token and I would get ETH, and I'd just pull my liquidity position. And by that time, someone else had already, you know, put in a bunch of liquidity. So,
yeah.
And the 1% pool was still there. So I'd pull out my 0.3% and then the trades would route through the more expensive pool. So for me, it's always been just like trying to be different, and the way to get there is just to be more curious about how things work. And, you know, as a kid, I used to pull everything apart, and I got to put it back together.
Yeah, that's like really inquisitive things that you've done, especially with setting up the LP and then just having the fees get routed through to you. It's also wholesome that you chose to support Zach XBT, and you were just like, yeah, I'll just help out and just mint for 30 cents, only to realize that you'll check your wallet back a couple of days later and it's $4,000, and you're like, is this a glitch, or did I just hit the X of a lifetime of 13,500? So yeah.
Makes you wonder who buys things when they're up that much, It's like the same with NFTs. When you would mint like an NFT for like 0.05 ETH, and then like a few days later sell it for like 20 ETH. You're like, who the fuck is buying this? Like, they got to be wealthy enough to buy it, but it just shows that like having money doesn't mean that you have any kind of a brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this episode is definitely staying curious and navigating things that come out and just being open to trying them. Throughout this whole...
I think so.
Yeah. My last question was, which is probably more aligned to speculators, traders, or asset allocators, but it would be great to get your opinion on this as well, is where do you see the market heading?
Oh, man. I wish I knew. I guess it depends on the time horizon that you're thinking. Like, I'm not trying to get out of the question, but I've had a stack of ETH since 1100, and I wrote it up and down. And the point is, like, I knew that I was going to be busy building a lot of things, and I was like, rather than just like sitting in stables, I tend to just think on this like, like a year to year basis. Like, what am I going to do this year?
Yeah,
and
I see what you mean.
If I'm going to be busy building, then I may as well like not worry too much about trading.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I own my home, so like I don't have a mortgage, and my living expenses are tiny.
Yeah.
Like, I don't buy things, I don't have things, but what I do is I do eat out once a day. Like, I fucking love cafes.
Yeah.
Like, I always will go and have like some poached eggs somewhere. Like, that's my treat. So
fuck yeah.
I just know what my expenses are, and I know that the way things are, I can sort of like see out the next decade.
Yeah.
And just, I'm happy with my life that way. So I think that the short-term sort of stuff, like, a lot of people are focused on like tariffs, right? They're like, oh, Trump tariffs are affecting the market, and he's trading against his power, right? And using that to his advantage and enriching his network and whatever. And it's like, of course he is. Like, that's one of the reasons you would even want to be a president, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get all the presidents over the time. Like, there's got to be some sort of self-serving, because like public service is just, it's I don't understand why anyone would want to do it. But then you got to think like, why the tariffs, right? And it's obviously because like their economy is in a position that it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We've relied too heavily on others, and this might not be a good solution to it, and maybe the whole thing is stupid. But if you sort of pay attention to someone like Ray Dalio or some of these other big macro thinkers, they're thinking about like the bigger picture. It always can zoom out more.
Yeah.
And the fact is, there are empirical cycles where currencies, exchange power, and different countries are dominant globally. So I just think like the US has mountains of debt, and if you've ever been to the US recently, it's not very nice.
Yeah.
Like, everything's kind of gross. Even the service, like, you pay a fortune in tips, and like the service kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Unless you get like lucky. And so I just don't think the US is what everyone sort of says it is a lot of the time. And so my point is, like, wherever sort of like the global economy is headed, like, who fucking knows? From what I can tell, it's like, you know, it's at a point where there's a lot of unknowns, and obviously, if you look to something like options, it's a really high resolution price, you know, mechanism for pricing things, and if you look at options markets, you get pretty, you know, complete information.
Yeah.
And there's volatility, so it means that people don't know where the fuck we're going. So why would I know?
Yeah.
But I think in the long term, that's bullish as fuck for crypto, because it's the whole reason crypto was invented. After 2008, too much trust in people and the systems that they run.
Yeah.
And greed is always a factor. And, you know, they were selling dog shit as securities, and they're in a similar position now. So I just think, like, flush out the trash and let's get back to decentralizing everything and building the world that we envisioned back when Satoshi had a fucking good idea.
Yeah, rate that guy sitting on $91 billion and kind of dipped. He's probably out there just living the high life, you know, not sweating any of this sort of stuff. So that was it for my questions. So I'll hand it back over to you in case you felt like we missed anything, or if there was anything else that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, honestly, man, I just want to go and have a beer with you now and like talk about you, because talking about myself this long is crazy.
Yeah, well, my other question is if you had a question for me, since I feel like you've opened a beer, right? I've asked you a question and then you haven't been able to drink it because you've just been like talking the whole time. So now's a chance for you to get some.
I'm on number 3, man. I'm on my 3rd one.
The sneaky sips. But yeah, now's a chance for you to sit back and, you know, just relax and ask a question if you like.
I've always been really curious about one thing in particular.
Yeah.
It's like, I really enjoy your company and Tom's company.
Yeah.
And I've never had much to do with anyone else in the crew. So I was always kind of wondering, like, how did Brotato come to be, and like how did your crew sort of, like, you know, how did you come together in the first place, and that origin story?
Yeah, it's we've been asked this before, and basically what it was, basically what it was is I was messaging Tom a fair bit because he seemed like he was a docs guy on crypto as a journalist, so he was copping flack because he was like real, but also like a really nice guy, and I knew that he was a local person. And so I was kind of just like reaching out to him and like, hey man, like we should catch up, because I was like pretty new to Melbourne. I came from Tassie originally, so there's no crypto scene down in Tassie. And so when I moved over,
Alex Saunders,
yeah, and even Stu, I think I don't know where he lives now, but I think from memory he lived in the north, so there wasn't really like much down there in the way that I knew. Anyway, so I moved up to
Launceston.
Yeah, Launceston. So I moved up to Melbourne, and I was like, well, I'm still doing this whole thing online, but there's not really like too many people to, you know, talk about it in person. So anyway, I was messaging Tom, and we planned a couple of times to like catch up, and it kind of, you know, fell through a few times with each other, like having plans and things like that. Maybe he didn't want to see me, some random guy on the internet, and I completely understand as well. And then I think it was Z. So there's 5 of us. There's Sticks, Tom, 1L, Z, and then myself. And basically what happened was, I might get this wrong, so if the guys are listening back to this, please correct me, but I believe Z and 1L knew each other because they had pudgy penguins, and Z's the type of guy who can lend his time to anyone and be like a really genuine friend. So I think it was Z that built up the friendship with 1L, and then Sticks came along later because he bought a pudgy. And so I think the group was Z, 1L, and Sticks for a little while. And then I think it was either Z or 1L that brought Tom into the group, and then they wanted to organise a dinner, and then I think I just got like the tack on invite, and Tom may have felt bad. He was like, oh yeah, Swiss, yeah, come hang out with us, you know, like we'll all go for a dinner. And so basically all 5 of us, because 1L isn't in Melbourne, so he's the only one that's not here. He flew down for a work thing, and we all caught up for a steak dinner in Pran, and none of us knew what we looked like apart from everyone knowing what Tom looked like. And so it was the first time that we all met each other at this steak place, and there was this waiter there who was like, obviously took the booking, and I was the first one to arrive, and I was like, oh, table for Z, and he's like, yeah, I don't have anyone under that name. And I was like, fuck. And so like I'm like standing awkwardly in the steak house, just like texting like, hey guys, I just said table for Z, and they said they don't know who that is. And then they like started laughing and everything like that, and it's like, oh, it's under this name. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, thanks. And then they were like, yeah, what's the phone number? And I was like, yeah, I don't know that either. And then we went like back and forth a little bit. Anyway, fast forward a little bit, we all got sat down and having steaks, and we like hit it off. Like we all had a really, really good time, like plenty of laughs. And then the waiter came over and did that whole like take a photo of everyone's phone thing, and then we just told the waiter, I was like, oh, believe it or not, like none of us have actually met before in person. And he's just like looking at us like as if it was like the weirdest thing, because we were like so loud and like laughing and just having the best time. He's just like, nah, you guys are weird, like this is just so weird, like how do you guys know each other? And then we tried to explain like crypto Twitter to him, and he was just like, nah, this is weird, like get out of my restaurant. But yeah, anyway, we hit it off, we had a really good time, and then as we got to know each other, we thought about doing a whole bunch of stuff, you know, like in crypto when prices are going up, like starting a DAO or putting funds together and doing like shared investing and pretty much anything you could think of. And then we decided to settle on a podcast, because what we would usually do is we would jump in a Discord that we had, and we'd just like get on call and just chat for hours on end. And so, yeah, we just decided to turn that into Brotato Capital, which is a podcast. Yeah, and so we're about to do our 50th episode, so we're trying to get the whole gang back together for that. But
fantastic.
We would basically just all veg out on a Sunday and just get a guest on or no guest on and just talk about the markets and hang out. And that journey alone has probably led me to meet like so many amazing people in crypto, including yourself and like the guys at Helix and IMF, and just being awesome. Able to meet Clouded and all these other people as well. So yeah, that's the story about how Brotato Capital came together.
That's great. I'm glad I got to hear it. I'm kind of bummed that someone else had already asked that, but it is an obvious question, isn't it? But I've got a follow-up one for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it, man.
When did you first realize that you looked like Jonathan Groff from Matrix Resurrections? Yeah,
so this is a two-pronged one. So there's like a funny side to this. There was a guy that tried to convince me to buy Bitcoin in 2017 at one of my first jobs, and like I didn't know if he had an X account or not. And then anyway, like 3 or 4 years later down the track, because we still had each other's number, because we got along at work, he like sends me a message, and he's like, this looks like you. And it's literally me from the Matrix film. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. And then, yeah, I went down the rabbit hole, realized he was the guy from Mindhunter. But it wasn't the first time I heard that either. Like someone said, oh, you look like this guy from Mindhunter, but I'd never seen the actual show. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I started like looking at photos, and then there was this GIF where, like my PFP is now, the extension of that is he's got a cigarette in his mouth and he's like about to light it, and he's like, you know, gesturing to Keanu Reeves in that scene. And I was like, that's sick. Like, I'm going to make that my whole identity. And then I've been with my girlfriend for almost 3 years, and I didn't tell her about I was into crypto until maybe like a year or so in, and I drip fed it. I wasn't always like, yeah, by the way, I'm in the trenches, like aping on like racist coins. It wasn't like that. It was just like, oh yeah, I think I remember. I think I know what FTX is, and then sort of peeled the band-aid off that way. But one of the things was telling her about this PFP that I have, and I was like, yeah, this is the thing that I have. And she's like, oh, that's Jonathan Groff. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, that's the guy from Glee. And I'm like, what? and then she's like, yeah, this guy's like super gay, and like played the king in a play. Oh my god, I've forgotten the name of the play. It's Alexander Hamilton or Hamilton. Yeah. And I'm like, what? And then I go down this other rabbit hole finding out that this guy is who he is and not actually the character that he was playing. And I was like, wow, there we go. You know, learnt something new. But yeah, so that's how. Yeah,
it's a nice bit of extra. It's like an extra layer of pseudonymity. So it's like, you know, that the people will see you with a woman, and they're like, "Oh, that can't be Swiss."
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. I can just hide it really well. Hide the I was going to say as well. There's a funny image that I've saved of Jonathan Groff as like the king, and he looks dumbfounded. Like he looks like he's like, you know, low IQ. So I was going to say, if my ETH bags go any lower, I'm going to change my PFP to it's just this image of him in like a king outfit, just looking extremely ordinary. But yeah.
Oh man. On that note, because this is live streamed,
Yeah.
I got one last thing to tell you. Just
go
like,
for it.
I don't know if you would enjoy it, but my girlfriend and I, sometimes we watch a YouTube live stream called Sid Squad.
Sid Squad.
And what it is, yeah, it's a guy with a voice similar to yours. Like, in my mind, like, you have like a great voice to just like host a talkback radio show on 2GB or something, right? It's like,
thanks, man.
And this guy, Kurt from Sid Squad, he live streams the planes landing at the airport. Like he sets up a tripod on like some, you know, random spot like at Ridge's Hotel or like on a car park, one of the multi-level car parks, and he like literally live streams as if it's like sport. It's got like the name of the flight number, the airline, the model of the plane, how many years old it is, the time, the wind. And then there's like all these people who are obsessed with planes. Like they have 1,500 people watching the stream every night, just like commenting on there and like sending him tips and shit. And I go on there from the IMF account and just say like, you know, GM Kurt by IMF. Send him tips. It's because we live in a west in Sydney, and you can hear the planes, and depending which direction they go in, sometimes it's pretty loud. You know, like if you're watching a show, you might have to pause it. They call it the Marrickville Minute. I live like close to Marrickville. Yeah. And we just like discovered that we like enjoy watching planes on a live stream. So, you know, if it doesn't work out for you with Brotato, you could always, you know, just go down to your local airport and do a bit of live streaming.
Yeah, that I never thought that would ever be a thing, but that does sound like quite a wholesome activity, because
it's crazy, man. They have custom emojis and everything. It's not.
I feel like that's going to be like the most watched stream from a federal agency, right? Like you'd feel like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I'll send you the link on Twitter, you know, so you can check it out.
I'll ask the GF if she wants to watch a live stream of a guy recording planes landing, and see if she gets up and about it.
Yeah, mate, it really works. You know, you'll have a great night.
If you don't ask, you don't get, man. Honestly, you just gotta test the waters with that sort of thing. Awesome. Yeah, dude. I feel like 2.5 hours of chatting. Yeah, man. How do you feel?
It is what you said on the box. You did say that it's 2.5 hours of. I think you said something about like 5 dudes in a Discord doing something a bit weird, but
we can cut it out, of course. But yeah, I never expected to go this long as well, and I just sort of something I can do as well, because basically for our people listening, I write everything down as you talk, essentially, and I've got like these notepads of words and arrows and equal signs and brackets and stuff of just following along with the conversation. So I might try and use my Farcaster account and just take photos of these notes and then just like post it with some things that you've mentioned, because you talked about Simon Sinek, you talked about the Non-Zero book. You've mentioned a few names here that I haven't actually heard of before, but are very prominent in the space. So it's something that I can kind of look back on and then do some more research into as well, which is good.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll send you the link to that video that I was talking about as well.
Yeah, definitely, man.
To get a bum steer.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
No, dude, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. And you also ran a Spaces earlier today, so you've talked out, man. You've maxed out your talking limit, surely.
Yeah, I had Dimitri on back to Bunny. It was a good chat. I like this kind of stuff though, because it doesn't happen all the time, and it's a good chance to sort of reflect, and I get a lot of value out of it as well. So I hope that anyone that listens to this in the future or was listening now, I hope they got something out of it. And just appreciate you having me on. Yeah,
no, dude, it was a really good chat, and definitely learnt a lot. And it'll be one that I'll enjoy listening back to. So I'll round it off. I just want to thank everyone for listening to the Best Trader I Know podcast from Brotato Capital, and appreciate you guys on the live stream sticking to this long. If you're rewatching this on the YouTube channel, please check out the links below. We'll have some links to Gami, to the IMF, in the links below. I just said links below, but I'll say it again, links below. The other thing as to why I said that 3 times was it's not financial advice as well. I know we did discuss some things in here that may or may not have had a token. We just want to make sure that we're not publicly advertising for you to go buy the things that were discussed in this video, and to always do your own research. That was the thing I just needed to make sure I could cover off as well for that one. But thank you so much for coming on, Gami. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
No problem, mate. And look forward to catching up with you in the near future. Hopefully we can grab a beer.
Absolutely.
And, appreciate you having me on.
No worries. All good. Definitely we'll have a beer for sure.